So in the previous video, we had a lecture video. We discussed the input impedance and the so-called line impedance or the input impedance, and we saw that at certain specific values, at specific points, specific points on the transmission line. Of course, depending on the load resistance and other parameters, the input impedance or the line impedance can be purely resistive, and it can have a maximum value of R naught S and a minimum value of R naught by S, where R naught is the characteristic impedance of a transmission line as per the high frequency approximation. So now, before we solve a few numerical problems, there is something a little bit more to be discussed about we have to discuss a little bit more on the input impedance, and that is the so-called phasor representation. Phasor representation of the input impedance or the line impedance. So we have seen in the previous lecture that the impedance, the line impedance or the input impedance, is expressed like this. The expression is this, one of the expressions, of course. The other expression is in terms of cosine and sine, but they are the same. One can be derived from the other. So this expression we had in the previous, we saw this in the previous lecture, and we had used this to understand certain things there. Now, what we do is we can represent the numerator as well as denominator and in the form of a phasor, in the form of phasors on in the form of phasors, and then we can interpret the same things that we interpreted earlier through that phasor diagram. But we will see that this phasor representation will be quite handy later on, and hence it is worth spending some time discussing this phasor representation. So we have this impedance like this, the expression for the line impedance or the input impedance like this. Now what we do is we will draw the phasor diagram. So this is the real axis and this is the imaginary axis. And maybe I will slightly lengthen this, otherwise the picture will get cramped. The figure will get cramped. Okay. Now, this is 1. So let this be 1. So maybe I will make it thicker. This is 1. So 1 is, the phase is 0, so it's 1. So this is the real and this is the imaginary axis. So its phase is 0 and magnitude of 1 is 1. So this is 1. Let's say this is 1. Okay. Now so we have this 1 which appears in both the numerator and denominator over here. Now we plot this, we show this in the form of a phasor. So if you see, this can be represented as a phasor. So the magnitude is k and the angle is phi minus 2 beta s. So let us say that for our convenience, maybe I'll slightly increase the length. Again, as I said, there may be cramming otherwise. Okay, so this is our 1. Now let's say that this angle is phi minus 2 beta s, so that this is k e raised to j phi minus 2 beta s. This magnitude will be the magnitude of the reflection coefficient, and this phase phi minus 2 beta stands for the phase. And now in the numerator we have 1 plus this phasor. So you can see here it is 1 plus this. 1 I have already plotted here, and this is the second phasor which I have here. Now the sum of the two will be, you should be knowing how to add the phasor. So the sum of the two will be this. This will be the sum of the two. So I will just wipe this angle now. Otherwise there will be too many things over there in that small space. So remember, this is k e raised to j phi minus 2 beta s, and this is 1. So the sum of the two is here, which means that this is actually the phasor which appears in the numerator. This is the phasor which actually appears in the numerator. And this is k e raised to j phi minus 2 beta s. So minus, you can look at the denominator, 1 is there as it is, and instead of plus k e raised to j phi minus 2 beta s, we have minus k e raised to j phi minus 2 beta s. So that will be this. So magnitude will be k, but between the two there will be a phase shift of 180 degrees or pi radians. And in the denominator we will have 1 minus k e raised to j phi minus 2 beta s, and minus k e raised to j phi minus 2 beta s is this. So we subtract in the sense from this we subtract this, or equivalently to this we add this. The result will be this. This will be the result. This will be the result. So I have now this as 1 minus k e raised to j phi minus 2 beta s. So this is the phasor representation of the line impedance. Now, if S is such that, now again we will discuss similar things as we discussed earlier in the previous lecture video, but we will try to interpret what happens to the phasors. If S is such that phi minus 2 beta s is 0, so if S is such that phi minus 2 beta s is 0, what happens is this, so here this becomes 0, so this angle will become 0. This angle was phi minus 2 beta s, so that angle becomes 0, and you will have k like this, and because the phase is 0, so you'll have k like this, and 1 plus k will be, this will be 1 plus k, and this will be the numerator. And meanwhile, minus k, the denominator, what comes in the denominator here will be like this. And when you add it to 1, you will get something like this. It's a rough sketch. 1 minus k. So from 1 to 1 you are adding this. It is as good as subtracting k from 1, and you get this. So I have made it slightly less than 1. And this is when we have the line impedance as purely resistive. As you can see here, 1 plus k divided by 1 minus k, this we have discussed earlier, it is purely resistive, and that will be R max. Now what happens is, now next, of course this we have discussed now. Now what happens when S is such that phi minus 2 beta s is pi? So when phi minus 2 beta s is pi, what happens is, I will show it here itself. So for some arbitrary value, the earlier diagram I will just draw here again. This was k, and this was phi minus 2 beta s. The numerator was this, The numerator was this, and this was minus k. Minus k in the sense minus k e raised to j phi minus 2 beta s, and the denominator was this, e raised to j, that angle. And again, this is what happened when we started the discussion. Then we saw what happens when phi minus 2 beta s is 0, and what we saw is that this will be over here and this will be over here. You will have 1 plus k in the numerator, 1 minus k in the denominator. Now what happens when phi minus 2 beta s is pi? When phi minus 2 beta s is pi, the picture will be the same as what it was when phi minus 2 beta s is 0. We can see that clearly here, because phi minus 2 beta s is pi means this angle becomes pi. That means this will come over here, because phi minus 2 beta s becomes pi. This will come over here, and simultaneously this will reach here. Now what happens in the numerator? We will have 1 minus k, because this phi minus 2 beta s has become pi. So we will have 1 minus k in the numerator and 1 plus k in the denominator, and that will take us to the case where we had, to the case which we discussed earlier, wherein the input impedance or the line impedance was purely resistive, and it was R0 by S. So now what happens is, from these two, if we find out, as we did earlier, what is 2 beta delta S, magnitude wise of course, we will get the result as equal to pi. That means delta S is pi by 2 beta, which is pi by 2 into 2 pi lambda. That will give you lambda by 4. So this was seen earlier. Delta S is equal to lambda by 4, because we had discussed in some detail that the distance between two adjacent Rmax and Rmin is lambda by 4. Now when it is reflected over here, what we see is that when phi minus 2 beta s is 0, when that was discussed earlier, please recall that figure. When phi minus 2 beta s is equal to 0, we had the Rmax as the input impedance, and when phi minus 2 beta s was pi, we had Rmin as the input impedance. And the delta S is lambda by 4, which means that 1/2 revolution over this phasor space, 1/2 revolution is equal to a distance lambda by 4 on the transmission line. That is what we saw here, isn't it? Because when phi minus 2 beta s was 0, the resistance, the input impedance or the line impedance was Rmax. And when phi minus 2 beta s become pi, the impedance became Rmin. And we know that the distance on the transmission line between Rmax and Rmin nearest is lambda by 4. And for moving from Rmax to Rmin, we have effectively completed 1/2 revolution here. And now if we relate the physical space between the 2 points on the transmission line and what has happened here, we can say that 1/2 revolution here is equal to a distance lambda by 4 on the transmission line. Extrapolating that, one full revolution here will be a distance of lambda by 2 on the transmission line. And again we see that one full revolution brings us back to the same impedance value, be it from here or any other point. One full revolution brings us back to the same impedance value. And that is something that we had seen earlier in the previous lecture video, that the line impedance has a variation with respect to S, a periodic variation with respect to S on the transmission line, and that spatial period is lambda by 2. So that is what we can infer. Now this information will be quite helpful later on when we discuss something called as the Smith chart. So with this, we will move on to solve some simple numerical problems, to have some in the form of some exercises. Okay, the first example we take is, again, this is a simple example, a similar one we had done earlier. The first example we take, the numerical problem we take is that we have a 50 ohms lossless transmission line. So 50 ohms lossless transmission line. So here lossless means the resistance and conductance values are 0, because these are the parameters which you introduce losses in the transmission line, because you know that purely inductive and purely capacitive reactances will be lossless, whereas loss is due to the resistance and the conductance. So a purely a lossless transmission line means we are assuming it's in the high frequency, it belongs to the high frequency approximation, and hence R and G is 0. And 50 ohm lossless transmission line means the characteristic impedance is 50 ohms. So remember these terminology. So 50 ohm lossless transmission line, we have 50 ohm lossless transmission line, and the load impedance ZR is 40 plus J 30 ohms. We have to find the reflection coefficient K. So that is the problem. Reflection coefficient K and the standing wave ratio. Similar problem we might have solved earlier, but we'll just begin with this. So K will be ZR minus R naught divided by ZR plus R naught. So we have ZR here, R naught here. ZR minus R naught will give minus 10 plus J 30 divided by ZR plus R naught will give 90 plus J 30. You can calculate this and get the answer as 0.333 J, or you can express it as 0.333 90 degrees. Okay, now next one. Again, a lossless transmission line. Again, this is a lossless transmission line. So I write lossless transmission line. So we have a lossless transmission line, and the operating frequency is 600 megahertz. There is a lossless transmission line and the operating frequency is 600 megahertz. That means the source which is passing the signal through the transmission line operates at a frequency of 600 megahertz. It's a 600 megahertz source. If the inductance of the transmission line is 0.25 microhenry per meter and capacitance is 100 picofarad per meter, we have to find R naught. We have to actually find the characteristic impedance, and it is lossless, so we know that characteristic impedance will be purely resistive. So I will straight away write R naught. So we have to find out R naught. We have to find out phase velocity, and we have to find out the phase constant. So phase constant is beta. So we have to find out these three from the given data. So the characteristic impedance will be purely resistive, and from our previous discussions we know that it is lossless, which means R and G is 0. So it will be square root of L by C, which will be square root of 0.25 into 10 power minus 6, that is L. So L is 0.25 microhenry per meter, 10 power minus 6, so many henry per meter, divided by C is given to be 100 into 10 power minus 12 farad per meter. And this turns out to be 50 ohms. So it is a 50 ohm characteristic impedance lossless transmission line. So we have found out the characteristic impedance. Next we have to find out the phase constant. We'll find the phase constant because from phase constant the phase velocity, we'll arrive at the phase velocity. So phase constant, again gamma, as you know, is square root of zy, which we have discussed this in the previous lecture videos, which is equal to, in general, alpha plus j beta, and in our particular case z is j omega l and c is j omega c, because it is lossless. R is 0, g is 0, and this gives us j omega root lc. J omega root lc, which means that alpha is 0, because alpha plus j beta is j omega root lc, because that is how it is flowing, right? So alpha plus j beta is equal to j omega root lc means that beta is equal to omega root lc. So phase constant you can straight away find out as equal to omega. We can find out from the given frequency 600 megahertz. So 2 pi into 600 into 10 power 6, 600 megahertz, 2 pi into 600 into 10 power 6, that is omega root LC, square root of L is again 0.25 into 10 power minus 6 into C is 100 into 10 power minus 12. And you can calculate this. This will turn out to be 25. This will turn out to be 25. And 10 power minus 6, 10 power minus 18. So it will be 5 into 10 power minus 9. All those calculations you can do. And you can check whether the final answer is 18850 into 10 power minus 3 radians per meter. Remember, the phase constant will have the unit of radians per meter, because this is going to appear as beta into z inside the cosine term, or beta into z e power j, beta into z. So that means that beta into z has to be in terms of radians, so beta will be radians per meter. So that tells us what is beta. And now phase velocity. Now moving on to phase velocity. Phase velocity is omega by beta. Again, I recall having taught this earlier. This will be omega by omega root LC, because just now we saw that beta is omega root LC, which means that the phase velocity is 1 by root LC. That will be 1 by square root of L is given to be again 0.25 into 10 power minus 6. C is 100 picofarad. Together it becomes 10 power minus 18. So 0.25 into 100 into 10 power minus 18. And that turns out to be around 2 into 10 power 8 meters per second. So you can see that it is, compared to the velocity we usually encounter, it is very, very close to the c, though it is less than c. 2 into 10 power 8 meters per second. So that's the velocity with which the phase propagates on the transmission line, on this particular transmission line. Okay, now the next problem. So here in this problem, we are told that ZR is equal to 25 plus J50 ohms. So that is the load impedance. ZR is equal to 25 plus J50 ohms. And it is at the end of a 50 ohm line. It is at the end of a 50 ohm line. That means R0 is 50 ohm. So if I say this is the transmission line of 50 ohm, it means that its characteristic impedance is 50 ohms. So a load of 25 plus j50 ohms is there at the end of a transmission line, which is of 50 ohms characteristic impedance. So we usually don't say the characteristic impedance term, we just say it is a transmission line of 50 ohm. Now, if the line length is 60 centimeters, that is the length of the transmission line is 60 centimeters. That means the length from the source to the load is 60 centimeters, 0.6 meters, and the wavelength is 2 meters. So the wavelength of the voltage wave or the current wave on the transmission line is 2 meters. And as you know, it is dependent on the frequency of operation. We have to determine the input impedance, ZS or Z in, whatever you want to call it. We have to determine the input impedance of the transmission line. So this is the parameter. So just for the understanding, our figure will be like this. Our setup will be like this. Schematic of the setup will be like this. This is the source. This is the transmission line. And this is the load. ZR equal to 25 plus J 50 ohms. I'll not write ohms there. There is no space. 25 plus J 50 ohms. And this is 0.6 meters or 60 centimeters. And the transmission line's characteristic impedance is 50 ohms. The lambda operating wavelength is 2 meters. So wavelength of the voltage waveform or the current waveform on this is 2 meters. Okay. Now we have to, all that we have to do is we have to take the formula for ZS, which we derived earlier, and simply substitute these numbers in that formula. So we know that ZS is equal to 1 plus K e raised to J phi minus 2 beta S divided by 1 minus K e raised to J phi minus 2 beta S. So in this, we have to, if we have to use this and find out the input impedance, we should know what is K. That means magnitude of K and its phase. That means we should be able to find out, we should know what is the reflection coefficient. We should know what is beta. And we should know what is S. And S is anyhow given because you are asked to find the input impedance. So S is 0.6 meters. Because you are asked to find out the impedance at this point. This is your input. So you have to find the input impedance. And the impedance in general as a function of S is this. When S0 is here, when S is equal to 0.6, what is the value of this? That's all that you have to find out. But to find that out, we should know what is K and what is beta. So let us do that. So beta is readily available because we are told what is lambda. Beta is 2 pi by lambda. That gives pi because lambda is 2 meters. So 2 pi by 2 is pi. So pi is the value of beta. Pi radians per meter. And K, we know the formula. The formula is ZR minus R naught divided by ZR plus R naught. That is equal to ZR is 25 plus J50 minus R naught. R naught is 50. So minus 25 plus J50 divided by ZR plus R naught. Again this plus this. You get 75 plus J50. 75 plus J50. Please verify all the answers later. And you can calculate this and you will end up getting is equal to, maybe I'll write, I'll write here, space here, is equal to 0.62 and the face angle will be 82.87 degrees. So, or something very close to this you will get. So this is the reflection coefficient. So we now have K with us, we now have beta with us, and we know what is S. So if you substitute now, you will get the answer to the question asked, that is to find out ZS at the input. So let us substitute. I will show you how this expression looks when we substitute these values. So ZS, the input impedance at S equal to 0.6 meters, and S is equal to 0.6 is the input. We have to find the input impedance. So ZS at S is equal to 0.6 meters will be 1 plus magnitude of K is 0.62. We found that out. 1 plus 0.62 e power j. Now, when you substitute phi, you should not substitute 82.87. You have to substitute it in radians, and the answer will be, or rather, the value in radians will be 1.44, and so on. 1.444 minus 2 beta s. 2 beta is pi, and s is 0.6 meters. That is what is going to be there in the numerator, and in the denominator you will have the same thing except for a change in this numerical sign. 1 minus 0.62 e raised to j, the same thing. So I will not write it down. You'll get the same thing here. And you can calculate this, and you will get an answer which is very close to, or maybe something exactly same as this, 113.78 minus j 20.22 ohms. So this is the impedance at the input of the transmission line, which was mentioned in this problem. And we can also express this in the polar form, 24.47 minus 55.7 degrees. Please verify all these numbers which I have calculated. Yes. Next one. This is a problem which you have to solve on your own. A transmission line has R equal to 2 ohms per meter. So I am giving you the parameters of a transmission line. The transmission line has R is equal to 2 ohm per meter, G equal to 0.5 millisiemens per meter. So millisiemens per meter, and the frequency of operation is 1 gigahertz. L is equal to 8 millihenry per meter, and C is equal to 0.23 picofarad per meter. You have to find out characteristic impedance. Remember, this is not a lossless line because there are non-zero values for R and G. So characteristic impedance will not be purely resistive. So you have to find out Z0, and you should also find out gamma. So this is an assignment problem for you. I will not give you the answers. You can find out the answers and you can compare your answers with others, or whichever way it is. Find out the correct answer for this problem. So this is an assignment problem for you. Again, another assignment problem for you. I will write the statement for this problem. An air filled coaxial cable. So remember, coaxial cable will have a conductor within a cylindrical outer casing, and it is air filled means the dielectric between the inner conductor and the outer cylindrical casing is air, free space. So an air filled coaxial cable made up of copper is to have a capacitance 22 picofarad per meter. So we want to have a capacitance of 22 picofarad per meter for this cable. Now inner conductor has a diameter of 0.1 centimeter. Remember, I am giving the diameter here. So this, if I show the cross section of the coaxial cable like this comes in the center. I am not drawing it. I am just giving. So maybe I will not confuse. I will try to put it as much possible. I know the best possible way I can put it in the center. Yeah. So this is the inner conductor, and this is the outer casing, metallic casing or shell or whatever you want to call it, the outer conductor. This is air filled. We want to have a capacitance of 22 picofarad. We want to have that value for the capacitance. Inner conductor has a diameter of 0.1 centimeters. This is 0.1 centimeter. Diameter is 0.1 centimeter. We have to find out L. We have to find out L. We have to find out the inner radius of outer conductor. So inner radius of outer conductor, this one. We want to find out the inner radius of outer conductor. So this we have to find out. Inner radius of outer conductor. We have to find out beta and lambda. You have to find out beta and lambda. Beta and lambda. Once you get beta, you get lambda, of course. You have to find out beta and lambda. What is beta and lambda? If 25 megahertz is the operating frequency. So find out beta and lambda at 25 megahertz. And to find out beta and lambda, while finding out beta and lambda, you can neglect dissipation. Now what we mean by neglecting dissipation is that we can assume it as a lossless line. So we have to find out beta and lambda, question mark, we have to find out at 25 megahertz by neglecting dissipation. So no dissipation, that means no loss. You can ignore R and G values if at all you have any with you. So remember, the question is an air-filled coaxial cable has to have a capacitance of 22 picofarad per meter. We are not saying it has to have a capacitance of 22 picofarad per meter. And the inner conductor has a diameter of 0.1 centimeter. The question is, you have to find out what is L, the parameter L, and the radius, inner radius of the outer conductor. You have to find out this. And then you have to find out what is beta and lambda at 25 megahertz if we assume that the transmission line is dissipation-less. That means no losses. Neglect R and G. So this is again exercise for you. You can solve it and arrive at the answer. You can, L formula was derived. No, not derived. We had discussed the formula for L earlier. You can use that formula. And similarly, from the formula for C, you can find out what is this. So that is left as an exercise for you.